Hi folks. Alright, so this week we're talking about common chord modulations. And common chord, there are several types of modulations that we're going to get into a little bit later. There's abrupt modulations. This one is one that is typically used during the common practice era when you're talking about closely related keys. If you watch the video, then you'll know that a closely related key is a key that has either one more sharp or flat or fewer than the key that you're in, and the relative minors of those keys. Okay, now the assignment that I'm giving you today, and I'm going to upload it as soon as I finish this video. The video takes a while because I have to record it, then I have to re-record it in a different format, post it to YouTube, put the link. So it'll take a while, but I wanted to let you know what's coming on and also kind of recap what you've looked at in the other two videos. And there's some of the two videos that I posted are both good, okay? But I want to give you my perspective on them because I think that the one that is from an outside source in YouTube, some of the things that he says I think are I have some problems with, and I want to boil it down to what I think is important and what you need in order to do the assignment this week. Okay? Now, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just show you, this is a review from the videos, but in the assignment that we're doing today, let me start out first by talking about closely related keys, because this is where you'll see common chord modulation happen. Okay, so let's say we're in the key of G. This is not a very good marker. Let me get this one, throw that one out. Alright, G. That one's not much better. Alright, hang on, let me try this one again. May have to get me some more markers. Or it could be my board. Okay, anyway, G. Alright, G has one sharp. Okay, one sharp F. So the closely related major keys to G sharp would be the one that has two sharps, which is D, has two sharps. And the one that has one fewer, we're looking at the circle of fifths basically, but the easiest way to look at it is one that has one more and one fewer. So we'll say C major, which has none, right? So those are the two closely related major keys for G. Now also you've got the relative minors, okay? So I don't want you to think this means D double sharp minor or something major. Okay, so C, the relative minor is A, G, the relative minor is E, and for D, the relative minor is B. Okay? So any of these keys here, if you're going from this one to this one or this one to this one, any of these, or back and forth, those you can use common chord modulation with. Okay, because it doesn't require you can find a chord that is common in both keys, and you do not have to use any accidentals. Well, of course you will if you're in a minor key and you have the the raised seventh or something, but you can use the existing chords as a pivot to go from one into the other. And of course that means you've got an established key going. Let's say you're in the key of G, and you have this progression going on 4, 5, let's say 2, whatever, and then you're going into, let's say, E minor, and you would look for what is a common chord. What is a chord? So in 2 that would be an A major, an A minor chord, and then E minor, that would be the same as a yeah, 2 would be an A minor, and then E minor, that A minor chord, E, F, G, A is a 4. Okay, so you would come to this chord, you'd put in that A chord, and then from then on, you would go on and establish your key, maybe go to a, you know, a 1, 6 or something, and, you know, go to your maybe 1, 6, 4, because, you know, the best way to establish a key is 1, 6, 4, 5, 7, 1. That'll always establish a key. So, you know, and you go on from there in E minor. And actually in E minor, these would be 1s. Okay? So that's basically what we're doing, is we're using this pivot chord, a chord that appears in both keys, and switching over into the other progression for the new key. Okay? Now in our in our assignment, we're going between E minor and G major and back to E minor. So we're going back and forth. It's a two-way street. So here we go. So let me show you. Okay. How I would do it in preparation for this assignment. Okay? So the first thing I would do is I would go ahead and put my treble clef, or just because it, you know, use any clef you want, but I put it in one. And put in your triads. I'm going to start with E minor. And we have 1 sharp. And I would go ahead and put in my triads. I like to write them out because if you're just thinking about pivot chords and stuff, fine, write out just the letter names. But if you're going to actually do some voice leading and orchestration, I find it's good to have your triads there. You don't have to think about it, right? So, you know, so here, you know, you have an E minor. That's an E, a G, and a B. Then you have the F sharp. And I go ahead and I put my accidentals over just so I don't forget, I don't get mixed up. Just like with the Neapolitans, go ahead and move everything over. So you have to answer the doorbell or something, you come back, you can remember that's actually an F sharp, you know. So we've got, and we'll label them in just a minute. All right, so we have F sharp, A, C. Okay, then we have a G, B, D. That's G, B, D, D. Okay, and then A, C, E, B, D, F sharp. Okay, and then a C, E, G, and a D, F sharp, A. Okay, so we have A, C, E, B, F sharp, B, D, F sharp. I'm showing you, this is what my scratch pad looks like. This is how I do everything. Scratch pad is your best friend. Always have. Right now I'm out of paper and I haven't downloaded any, so I just have a half of one. But I'm not going to let that stop me, right? Okay, and then we have a C, E, G, and we have a D, F sharp, A. All right, that's an E minor, and we have G major. I like to put my Roman numerals for the major key first, just because I can always remember which ones are major, which ones are minor. The minor keys, I'll let them fill themselves in afterwards. So G, we know the 1 is here, right? So in G, this is our 1, which means this is a 2, this is a 3, this is a 4, this is our 5, this is our 6, and this is our 7 diminished. Now all we have to do is turn those into E. So we have minor 1, 2 diminished, 3. See how easy it is if you already know whether it's major or minor, just to copy it up. And then here we have a 4 and a 5 and a 6 and a 7. Okay? So you really have a lot of, they're all common chords. If it's a relative minor, it has the same key signature, right? So it has all the same chords. But we're looking for, in a common chord modulation, we're looking for a pivot chord, a chord that appears in both keys that would normally lead to a 5 chord. Because a 5 chord is going to establish your new key, 5/7 especially. But we don't want to use the 5 chord as a pivot chord unless we're in an abrupt modulation. We'll talk about that another time. But, so the ones that would normally lead to a 5 chord, okay, if we're going from E to G, then we might want to use this as a pivot chord, because now I know in one of those videos, whoever it was, said you don't want to use 6. 6 doesn't lead to 5. Huh, you think? Listen to this. Okay, if I'm in the key of G, that was E, that was a 6 chord going to a 5, 5/7, or how about E minor going to a 1/6/4. I think 6 leads to 5 very nicely. Don't be afraid to use 6 as your pivot chord. So this could be one, because 6 would go to your 5 in G. Okay. Here's another one. So this is when when you want your new key. New key. If you're going from E to G, then you probably want to use this one, because in G, that if you could use your 1 key, your 1, that is all over the place. You can stop at 1, you can use at the end of a cadence, turn that into a 6 and go right into the 5/7. That's a little hint. That's one thing you may want to look for in the assignment. Spoiler alert. So 6 can go easily to a 5. The 2 can go to a 5. Okay, and a 4 goes to a 5. But you're not going to often see a major 6 chord in the key of E. So that's probably not going to be a very likely choice. But it could conceivably happen, I guess. If you find you a major 6 and you want to turn it into a 4, you probably won't see it. But these are all things that would lead to a 5 chord in G. Okay, so these are your 2 main ones. All right, now this one is one that you might, it just depends on what you get in your music. You got to just, when you do your analysis, you want to look for chords that would lead to a 5. Okay? Now, when you're going back from G to E minor, you probably would want to use this would go to your 5, 4 goes to a 5, right? 6 goes to a 5. You know, so 1 could go to a 5, 2 diminished can go, you know, so so those are things if you're doing a modulation. But now when you have an existing piece that has modulations back and forth, it's a matter of determining at what point are we leaving this key, and now we can analyze it both in the key of E minor and G, or G and E minor, and that would be your pivot chord. It's probably going to be something before that 5/7 comes up in the new key. Okay? So, I'm going to upload, I'm curious, I'm not going to give you any hints in it. You can tell by looking at the hymn. It's one everybody knows. You can tell that you start in E minor, and in the verse, in the stanza, and then in the refrain you end up in G. So there's some debate. Is this E minor, an E minor hymn that has some G major in it, or is it a G major hymn that has some E minor in it? You know, what do you consider the hymn overall to be? I would say it's probably in G major, even though it starts off in E minor, just because there are more measures in G major. The whole refrain is, so I just want you to keep in mind. So this is kind of what it's gonna look like when you when this is what you're going to be looking for in your music. Okay, I don't think you'll have any difficulty, but there are some gray areas, because you have so many common tones. At what point is it really pivoting over? You might say it's this chord. No, I think it's two chords back is where you're really, I'm curious to see what you come up with, because or music theorists can argue about, no, that's not what I think is happening here. I think we're actually, y'all, I'm sorry, my nose is itching. Now, I'm directing this at one of you specifically, but I want to make sure that after we have this assignment, I would like for us to meet next week, y'all, the students, and me, so we can go over it and talk about it, because it's one of those things that there's not just a one right answer. You may come up with something different from me, okay? So I'm curious to see how you do it. And then we'll talk about it, because we may have some nuances that are different in all three of our arrangements, and I want us to talk about it, because we're not going to spend much time on common chord modulation. Okay? Now, I went ahead and uploaded the preliminary exercise from your book that just says, find me the 5 keys that are closely related to this key, so like that G, we have the one before, the one after, and the minor, you'll do that for a few of them, and then it's going to give you a chord, and it's going to say, in this key it's this, in which key would it be this, so you got to fill in. So you'll have one key 1, key 2, and then you'll have a Roman numeral, the chord, and the chord. Okay, and it's going to look like, I always forget how that bracket goes. So you've got, like this is how it's going to look. All right, sometimes they'll give you all 3 of these, you fill in this one. Sometimes they'll give you these 3, you fill in that one. Okay, so if it was an E and a G, you might have 4 and 2. Okay, so you're going to fill those in. That's all it is, those preliminary exercises. It shouldn't take you too much time to do that, all right? So I recommend that you do that. So we have 2 really assignments. One is the preliminary exercise, which I've already uploaded into Module 4. And then as soon as I close this out, I will go ahead and post this video, and I may just go ahead and post the hymn, the assignment, and then post this so you can refer to it before you do the exercise, okay? Anyway, either we can use, next week when we meet, you have 2 choices. We can either use because one of you has a regularly scheduled one-on-one meeting time. If you can both attend at that time, that would be great. Your other alternative is for y'all to get together and decide when you can meet with, and I will accommodate you, whatever you say, even if it means booting somebody else out of their one-on-one time. You go ahead and tell me when you can meet, and the 3 of us will meet, and we can cancel the other one-on-one. but I think it's important. Um, you know, you're both doing really well in the class, so I haven't been, um, I haven't been a stickler for the format and frequency of our meetings each week. But I want to make sure that we have all of us together for this particular review next week. So keep that in mind, please. And just one of you can text me and say what you came up, in Canvas, in the inbox. Go ahead and let me know what day and time you've decided on, and we'll schedule it. And then that way, and have your homework handy, and then and we can join in a meeting, and we'll go over what those pivot areas are, where it goes back and forth, and plus whatever, were these passing tones here that we marked, the neighboring tones, or whatever. We'll go through it, and then we can probably put common chord modulation to rest after that. Okay? All right. I'm looking forward to doing this with y'all. I think you'll find it interesting. And I'll talk to you soon.